Hello, everyone. I'm really delighted to be the third person to speak after our eminent leaders here. I'm going to start off saying a bit of a, put it out there to challenge some of our thinking. I'm going to go through my career, which is much, much shorter than everyone else's. Not quite. And then I'm going to talk through some of the lessons, what I've learned, which will spookily sound very familiar. So leadership is an absolute doddle. I've got to where I've got to. I've got 2 degrees. I breastfed 3 children, one while I was running a marathon. I got a master's degree. I've been headhunted. People want me on boards. It's been just this trajectory of success going up like that. That's what I felt when I listened to some women in leadership, when I went to some forum where I felt like, and then I needed board and I needed to do this, and then I was headhunted, and then this happened, and I got an honorary degree, and I had 3 children, and I always look fabulous in my active wear as well when I'm having coffee mornings with all the school mums who are all very envious of me. It is not like that. I have not found like that and going, gosh, that does not sound like my experience at all. I feel like success is not like that. Success is here, one down, one up, one, children throwing up, sleep deprived, going to work. And it's actually, that is what my experience has been. But there's been a fabulous, fabulous journey, and it's really the people that you meet that you learn along the way. So I'll give a little brief run through of where I've come from. I'm number 3 of 4 girls, born of an Irish mother in London. I was born in London. My father was Welsh, or he still is Welsh. He's still alive. My mother isn't, but my father is. And one of 4 girls, all very strongly opinionated girls, which makes for very interesting family dynamics. There's some great things about it, very challenging things about it. My mother was the main breadwinner, and but she couldn't buy a washing machine without my father signing off on it. She became a medical secretary. She had to help earn money for the family. So she was an extremely bright woman. But there were teaching, secretarial work or nursing, and she just needed to earn money quickly, so became a secretary. And she was the driving force of the family to emigrate to Adelaide because she wanted her girls to have a better life of opportunity, and this is how we came to Adelaide. There was a great public school literally a stone's throw from our house, but no, we had to catch a bus for an hour to get to St Pius X Primary School at Windsor Gardens, and where I went to. And I went to a girls' school, the Brigidine Nuns at Holden Hill, and then I went to St Ignatius College. When I finished school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I enrolled in teaching, but I took a gap year. I worked as a pharmacy assistant at Royal Adelaide Hospital for a year, down in the basement. I had to decipher doctors' writings to type up the labels to put on the bottles. I actually did something wrong. I didn't take back the narcotics were one short, and it was under my watch. Anyway, sorry, lost one. But it was a great experience. I earned maybe $9,000. I thought I was rolling in it because all my friends were university students, so I would buy them all drinks. And so I didn't have much money, but I travelled. And I came back and I said, I'm not sure if I want to be a teacher still. I will want to do politics. I went to Flinders University in my first year. It was fabulous. The mixture at Flinders University, you had mature age students and who marched against the Vietnam War, you had trade unionists, you had a whole mix of people with this rich, diverse group of people. But that actually, I lived in Athelston at that stage, so it was a 40-minute bus into Adelaide and another 40-minute bus out to Flinders, so I changed the next year to Adelaide. And I did politics, and then I went into history. I went into Russian history, which was absolutely fascinating, and then I thought, do you know what it is? Knowledge is power to the people. I must do journalism. I must know the Russian Revolution and then the communist era, and knowledge is really important. I must communicate knowledge. Then I did journalism. I did a few stints on Channel 10 as a trainee, and I realised that it wasn't quite the same. It was a little bit like, what was I wearing and what is my makeup? Maybe need a bit more makeup. Your hair's not quite the right colour. But it wasn't quite the same thing that I was looking for. And when I graduated, there weren't any jobs at that point. And so I worked in the body shop for a year as a manager. I saved up money and I travelled overseas. I worked in pubs, I worked in shops, and I did a bit of journalism. But being a cadet in England, in the UK, you cannot survive on the money. And I worked at BBC Nottingham at a radio production time. One of my strongest lessons in communication has not been through my degree. It has been working in serving the public, either behind a counter or at a restaurant, and really challenging things like pouring red wine on a gentleman's white shirt that he got on Christmas Day, that his mother gave it to him across the table. But anyway, sorry. But it is really one of the true experience of life in serving of people. I met my husband overseas. He's Irish, and he thinks that he's sacrificed. He's a European prince coming to Australia, and it's not quite that. But I've always been interested in politics and people. While at university, I worked for the Amnesty International group on campus, and I started working for the Australian Democrats, and I worked for 9 months. I worked 5 days a week at the body shop and 1 day a week volunteering in the Australian Democrats. I worked for Sandra Kank, if everyone remembers Sandra Kank. She's probably most known for her autumnal colours that she wore in Parliament, a one-child policy approach, but really fascinating experience of being a parliamentary officer, learning about legislation. I would go down to she's obviously in the upper house, go down to the lower house and think they're just throwing stones at each other. The upper house is really where it's happening. And I was a candidate for the Democrats. On my second child, I was pregnant with my son, and they needed someone on a corflute in the seat of Bragg. Now, the seat of Bragg is currently Vickie Chapman's seat. The idea that the Democrats would come cooee of winning that seat is obviously, I'm not going to get it, so I'll be all right. So it's really, really confronting driving around seeing your face up on stovey poles. And my nieces, and one of them's here today actually, said, Auntie Jules, we'd love one of your corflutes. I thought, isn't that gorgeous? They want one of my corflutes. I think, yeah, sure, which one? The one by the petrol station. We really want that one. I thought, God, the one by the petrol station. The one that's got the blacked out tooth, the 5 o'clock shadow. Thank you. It was a great experience, and it was first I came into contact with Mike Rann. And I worked for Mike Elliott, back to the Democrats. I worked for Mike Elliott, and then he left Parliament, and Mike Rann, who I sort of had connections with through sort of netball, through my sister who played state netball, said, why don't you come and work for me? Work for the Premier of the state. I'm happy with the Australian Democrats, thanks. Huge influence. And so Mike Elliott left, and I went, maybe I should go and see if Mike Rann wants me to. So I went in and I had an interview, and it was very unusual because I did not come from a Labor Party background. I did not go through the ranks, and it was a very unusual thing for him to have someone like me in advising him. That goes to a point of diversity, of listening to people's different opinions and where you come from, which is a really important thing to learn. So I spent 5.5 years working in Mike Rann's office, which was, I loved it. But I had my third child while working in that office. And work-life balance just wasn't there at all. Even though I loved it, in the end, after 5.5 years, I sort of couldn't really do it all. And it was sort of funny because with the Australian Democrats, I was writing policies about building communities and not prisons. Then I worked in the Premier's office and I was working on policies, really strong law and order policies. And it was really fascinating. And I loved it. The people I learnt from were amazing. But it is really tiring. During that election period, I think I had a cold sore that was taking over my face, and it was time to think about what I really wanted to do. And the one thing about being in the political office was that you never have ownership. The policies that you developed or the ideas that you develop, you don't have ownership of it. I don't develop it. I get it at the end and I value add, or I say, oh, no, I'm going to change that bit. But it's not really yours. You haven't developed it. And that's something I really missed. And so I was asked to apply for a role in DPC, and that was in climate change policy. Then I was asked, and I loved it. And I think the first day I was there, I said, some public servant's written such and such. I went, oh, actually, I'm a public servant now. And then into the Department for Water, and that was the first time I was on the executive of a department. And again, Scott Ashby and the Tim Goods, who we were all familiar with. And then I went to, then we sort of amalgamated, and Juna. And so I've been on the executive under Sandy's leadership for, I don't know, a year maybe. And so that's where I've come from. So that's a very short history. So what I've learnt, and it's a little bit like Anne going through the 5 things, it's a little bit more than 5, so I'll try and skip through them. Authenticity, just being who you are and being authentic. People know when you're doing a snow job, and you just need to be authentic, and also never ask people to do something you're not willing to do yourself or have the capacity or the ability to do yourself. Strong communications, verbally and written, just really being the exemplar and being able to communicate the message and listen back. One thing I'm sort of like still learning is the ability to influence the right people. So how do you influence? So sometimes you are going to get a no. I had a few no's in my time, and it's really hard. Well, I found them really hard because I'm right, and so someone telling me no, and then goes, well, for me that's they have to change. But of course, the lesson is, how do you influence? How do I influence that person so they are going to say yes? That is a work in progress for me. Know what motivates those who wish you influence. So how do I know what makes someone tick to get them to sort of think about saying yes? Know my own strengths, and then recruit or search out others to fill the gaps. You can't be good at everything. And so know what your strengths are and link into all the other people that have those complementary skills. Maintain and build a strong team. That's a constant work in progress, and it's huge. As a leader, you can only lead if people are following, and you're not a leader if you don't have anyone working with you or for you. Keep things simple. Network, even if it doesn't come naturally. It's really important to have your connections out there, not just within your agency, but across other agencies, external businesses, your stakeholders. Understand the small p and the big P of politics. I mean, I understand, and I've underscored this, because it means not being involved or putting your judgment in about what you think the government might do or the opposition might want, but it's being really aware of it and how it's going to influence your advice or your work. Always have a good idea ready to go. Ready to go. There are times when you have election times that come up, budget times. You should always have something in your drawer that goes, this is my great idea, this is how we do it, because you never know when it might come up, and that might be your legacy. Be persistent. Be persistent, but don't try the same things twice. I've tried that. Doesn't work. So if you try it more, if you do it twice, then you've got to think about another way of doing it. Do I need to go through somewhere else? Is there somewhere else on the board or somewhere else who you plant that idea, that becomes their idea, and then you have success? Find a mentor or advocate, which is obviously what all our wise women are saying. Be proactive, don't wait to be asked. Take advice from a diverse group of people. Listen to what they're saying. That's one of my grand strengths. The ability to listen to people from all sorts of areas, and especially the people that don't agree with you on a lot of things. That's important. Delegate where possible. It's good for you and it's good for your staff. Always have a sense of humour. That's it.